Hi, folks. This is Juliet Davis, and today we're going to take a look at 4 different kinds of masking in Photoshop. Now, I know some of you have already learned the basics of masking, but this lesson is going to do a little refresher on those techniques, but also look at some of the trickier masking issues that you run into. So, masking in Photoshop is a foundational skill, and yet people can get so frustrated trying to remember how to do it, falling into some common mistakes. So, this video shows 4 simple techniques that will change how you think about masking and make it second nature to you. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the baby on the left and we're going to have it appear on the background that you see on the right. These are Pixabay images, so they're free for use. The baby won't look cut out or have fuzzy edges. We're even going to capture the baby's wispy hairs when we mask it. But first, a question for you. Why wouldn't this background work? Why don't you pause the video a second and see if you can think about light sources and content. Okay, did you pause the video? And do you have some answers or some ideas? If you notice that the baby's face is lit from the left, then you're perceptive. In contrast, the background on the right is lit from behind. So these would look unnatural together with 2 different sun sources. Not to mention that we might not want to raise a baby in a poppy field this size since it's illegal in many countries. But when you're combining images, watch for both content and light sources. Here's the finished image that we'll create with the baby on the background. And here are the 4 techniques we'll learn. 1, add layer mask button. 2, a feathering technique. 3, picture frame technique, and 4, select and mask for refined edges. So I have Photoshop open, but I think I'm going to go get my images first and paste them in. So here we have the baby. I'm going to hit copy, and then I'm going to go to Photoshop and go to either File and New or Control N, which is the quickest way. When I do that, I see an option that's called Clipboard, and that's going to automatically open up a space that is the size of the image I copied. So I'm going to double click that to open that area, and then I can just either go to edit and paste, or I like to use shortcuts, and that would be Control V or Command V if you're on a Mac. So we have the baby here. I'm actually going to make the image size larger in view by double clicking on the hand tool, and then I'm going to go get another image for the background, and that is this background, copying the image and pasting it right in. Of course, here we have the layers that were automatically created when we pasted the images in, but I need to move the background underneath the baby. By the way, if you can't see your layer panel, you can go to Window and Layers. Probably should have said that before. Anytime you need a panel, it's under Window. So I know what you're probably thinking. Well, we need to remove some of this area so that the background shows through. So let's use the eraser tool. Oh no. That's not what we want to do, but let's get it out of our system because it's what a lot of people do to begin with. And even I have made that mistake in the past, but we'll tell you why that's not a good idea. Oops, I better be on the right layer when I'm erasing. Here's the layer I want to erase. Okay, so here I am erasing away, but there are a couple issues with this. One is I don't have a very steady hand here to be, going around the baby. But second of all, I can't get back what I've erased. So eraser tool's not a great idea, especially when a client could say, oh, we want changes, and you can't make changes because you've already deleted your image. So we're going to go with something different that's equally easy, and instead of the eraser tool, let's go back to the history panel before we started erasing, and instead let's go down to a button down here called Add Layer Mask. click. That is going to add a little mask icon here that gives you a thumbnail of what your mask is going to look like. And then you can go to the brush tool instead of the eraser tool, and you're going to work with the black and white colors. The black is going to take away background, and the white is going to bring it back again. And this is really good because now if I accidentally go into Boo Boo's arm like this, I can bring it back again. And we have it back. I still have the issue though of this unsteady hand, and it's going to make a kind of a cutout look around the baby, which is an amateur look. You've seen it before. Even if I decide to feather, which is another technique over here, I can use feather, add some feathering. That's better, right? Because it gets a little, I can get a little closer. It's just a little fuzzy line there, but still you're going to get this kind of fuzzy image, and that fuzziness on the edges is kind of a giveaway that maybe we don't know our Photoshop tools so well. So you can use the fuzzy tool there, the feathering, if you have an image that's, say, mystical and misty and you want a lot of feathery looking things. But in this case, we really want a precise outline around the baby. So once again, we're going to go back to our history panel before all of this happened. And instead, we're going to create a very precise mask. One of the things you can do is make a selection first before you mask. So I could take, for example, the elliptical tool here or the rectangle tool, and I can make, if I hold the shift key down, it'll make a perfect circle. I can make a circle around the head of the baby, and that's a selection. And then I can click Add Layer Mask, this little rectangular button. And if I get on the right layer here and I click that button, then boom, I have created a layer mask and I have revealed the selection here. Now I can also go back to my brush tool at this point and use the black and white paints as needed to either add more background or add more here. I could make a weird frame if I want to. But what if I want a more precise selection around the baby's silhouette? Let's go back in history and see how that can happen. Let's take a look. Normally you would say, well, maybe if I want to select the baby, I would use a quick mask tool. So, and by the way, you can increase the size of your brushes, etc., by using the bracket tools. On the right, it's larger, on the left is smaller, and this is what you get when you quick select the baby, but it's not always precise, as you can see. Instead, now what we do is we simply go up here and say select subject. Much easier and quicker, and Photoshop is going to detect the edges of our subject and do a rough selection. And it is rough. You can see here it's inside the lines of the silhouette, and that's because when we go to this select and mask button that we're about to go to next, we need to make sure the line is inside and doesn't have any background color in it, because we can always expand our selection. Okay, so I can already see I'm going to need to get some of these little hairs on the side back in, some of these hairs on top back in. So we're going to go, and some of these hairs over here. So we're going to go to select and mask, which is going to take us to a new window that will refine the edges as we need them. Wow, and it's already done a pretty fantastic job. Let's take a look at our view. I have the option to view in onion skin, which is really helpful. That's when you have your subject fully opaque, but your background has transparency, so you can kind of see the differences of the edges there. So I really like to look at that. I also like to check it out on white background. Ooh, look at that, to see how the hairs came in, and indeed those hairs did come in nicely, and the ear came in nicely. Everything is pretty perfect here. If it weren't, I could take this tool called the Refine Edge Brush tool, and I could move it along the edges to bring more of the hairs back in. But it appears Photoshop has done a good job on its own. I do like to check remember settings so that when I save this version and I want to create a new version, it remembers the settings I had before. You can also click color aware or object aware, and sometimes you get a better selection with an object aware if you have colors that are very similar between your subject and background. Sometimes it's better with color aware if your colors are very different. So you can try it back and forth, but we have a good selection here. Now we have some sliders we can work with. Do we want to create a smoother edge? Because that's an option. Do we want a feathered edge? A little bit of a feather, maybe just a tad bit. Make it look a little natural. Make it look a little smooth. We can have contrast, more between your subject and background. We don't need to shift our edge, and we don't need our output settings yet. So I think we're pretty good, and the baby's selected well, so I'm going to click OK and see what happens. Wow, and there's our baby.